played this game on one occasion. At the time, we were calling it Roadkill Roulette because we figured roadkill is about the only thing we'd find playing it. By God, I wish that was true. If somebody's telling me this story for the first time, I don't think I'd believe it myself. But if you doubt what I'm about to tell you, I will send you a signed affidavit from my buddy Campbell Bogus, who was there with me at the time. The other day, a couple weeks ago, I guess it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was binging some YouTube videos about people using this Randonautica app and finding all kind of weird stuff. It got me thinking about how when I was a lot younger, back before smartphones and all that, we had our own low-tech ways of getting into weird adventures. I think I can safely say that me and my buddy Campbell were like early Randonauts. Maybe retro Randonauts? Paleo Randonauts? We grew up in the holler. I suspect you did too, Ed. We didn't have a whole lot to keep us entertained. We didn't even have cable. We only got 3 channels on the TV. So we had to be a whole lot more, I guess you'd say, imaginative to entertain ourselves. Wild turkey and blackberry shine was often the answer, but we weren't into all that. We were usually too broke for a case of Natty Light and underage to boot. Campbell and I would drive around town in his dad's old Chevy and just talk mostly. Talking about cars and dreaming about women, like that old song says. Sometimes on the weekends, we'd head over to the main branch of the public library and go through the discard box looking to find some Stephen King's or Tom Clancy's, maybe some comics. One day I scored it was like a book of magic. You know, spells and potions and stuff. Now, we're a deeply religious community, and this wasn't long after the days when churches were burning scary stories to tell in the dark along with white zombie CDs for being too satanic. So a book like this would be extremely hard for us to come by. Honestly, I can't imagine why the library would have a book like that on their shelves anyway. It was marked up with handwritten notes and scribbles, like one of my Nana's recipe books. On the last page, I found some faded handwritten instructions. The spell of finding, and it started with a silly poem. Ye shall find what ye seek, be it angel, demon, or foe, if ye follow these words I have written below. Write your intentions on the dried hide of a deer and burn it immediately. Gather the ashes in your hands and rub them on a bird of prey's bones. Toss the bones and read the signs. They'll take you to what you seek. Note: advanced spell. Do not attempt without a knowledge of the mystic arts and sorcery. Me and Campbell got awful tickled reading what must have been the ramblings of some crackpot. But we were bored and curious. We didn't have deer hide or bird bones, but we did have a pen, an old notebook, and a quarter. What we didn't have was a clear idea of what we were seeking. We thought for a minute, and Campbell started grinning. He tore out a sheet of notebook paper and wrote down, "I seek a gorgeous redhead." We giggled for a minute. Campbell had a thing for Angie Everhart ever since he saw her in Bordello of Blood. Must have rented that tape once a month. Then I flicked the lighter and burnt the page. Watched it burn, and then we rubbed the ashes all over my lucky quarter. We made a set of rules. The original spell wanted us to throw bones and listen to them, whatever that meant. What we came up with was we'd start driving and flip the coin whenever we hit a 4-way intersection. Heads would go left, tails would go right. If we dropped the coin or anything like that, we'd just keep going straight. So we hopped back in the Chevy and took off up a road with Campbell driving and me flipping. We're going along for a while and ended up way outside of town pretty quick. We got so damn lost we couldn't believe it. Driving through country we'd never seen before. Ended up on some dirt road way down in Unicoi County. Cousin, that road got narrower and narrower until it stopped at a cattle guard in front of a green metal fence and a bunch of posted property signs. The coin flips were telling us to go on through the metal fence. So, young and stupid as we were, we parked that Chevy truck and continued on foot. It was in the fall of the year, and we left town about 3 in the afternoon. So by the time we made it this far, it was getting on about supper time. The sky was overcast, so we couldn't hardly tell how low the sun was in the sky. Campbell liked to night hunt, so he always had a couple of wheat lights in the truck with him. A wheat light is a type of light you'd use for mining. There's a heavy battery pack that you strap to a belt with a corded headlamp attached. So we strapped on our wheat lights, hopped that fence, headed up through the grassy field. There's a clear trail to follow, and if it ever seemed to fork off in any way, we'd flip a coin. Now, this grassy field butted up against a patch of thick brush and a tree line, and the trail cut right up into the woods. We got a few paces inside the tree line, and then we both stopped at about the same time, noticing how unnaturally quiet it was. And just at the top of the next rise, we saw her. We couldn't make out her face or nothing, but she had long red hair that was tangled and matted with leaves. She was wearing a white sundress on an evening that was way too chilly for sundresses. The hem of her skirt looked torn at the bottom, and one of the straps just kind of hung off the right shoulder. One of us, I believe it must have been Campbell, hollered at her and she ran. We took off after her and followed her up the hill until she, and I swear on a stack of Bibles it's true, she vanished. Just poof, gone. By now it's full dark. If she hadn't been wearing white, there'd have been no way we could have followed her, even with our lights on. We went digging around to the last spot where we saw her standing, and I caught sight of something kind of shiny buried beneath some leaves. It was an old handsaw. The handle was rotten, and the blade was rusty and smeared with something that looked like blood. Not bright red, but kind of dark brown, like the color of blood when it dries. Was it blood? I don't know. I didn't want to find out, though. We decided it's time to go, and we lit out of there quick. I can't tell you how we found our way back to the truck. We drove the backwoods, finding road signs. People weren't carrying smartphones with GPS back in those days, until we found State of Franklin and drove straight back into town. We didn't speak of it for about a week. We didn't run and tell anybody else about it either. Who'd have believed us? The next Saturday, I brought it up to Campbell. I'm pretty sure that we both thought we'd seen a ghost or our eyes had played tricks on us, but the longer I thought about it and prayed on it, the more I realized that girl must have been real. And if she was, didn't we have an obligation and a civil duty to help her? I suggested that we talk to Campbell's aunt, who worked as a secretary down at the sheriff's office. But Campbell said they'd just as likely say we dreamed it up. Hell, we might have gotten in trouble for trespassing. But I eventually wore him down and convinced him to go looking for her. What can I say? When you're young, you just don't think right. We brought some supplies this time. A backpack with some food and water, 2 wheat lights, a compass, 2 knives, and Campbell's rifle with plenty of ammunition. We had a notion that if somebody called the law on us for trespassing, we'd be able to say we were just out squirrel hunting or something. That would at least sound a lot less crazy than saying we were out ghost hunting. This time, we were able to drive back by memory. We had a vague notion of how to get there from a highway, and a few wrong turns notwithstanding, we ended up at that old metal fence well before sundown. Once we started walking through the woods, we relied on the quarter again to guide us to the redhead. That led us straight to the same rusty old handsaw on the hill. And then right on cue, she appeared. I don't know if she was standing closer or if we could see better in the daylight, but either way, we could see just how messed up she was. Her arm, where the dress was torn, was twisted at a sick angle. Her feet were bare and bloody. Her bangs covered her eyes, but her lips were cut and swollen. We couldn't see her eyes, but we knew she was watching us. Then we heard this weak voice, sounding like a dead cat being dragged through the gravel.
Why aren't you helping me?
Then she took off running. She had us weaving between trees, even as we ran after her, shouting for her to stop. She just kept running. At one point, I was close enough to reach out a hand to stop her, but my ankle caught on something, and I went flying forwards. Hit the ground so hard, I was spitting up leaves. And of course, she was gone again. I looked down at what I had tripped on. It was a purse. It had been unzipped and emptied, and the strap had snapped. I'm not sure if I broke the strap when I tripped, or if it had always been like that. Campbell come over and sat next to me long enough for us to drink some water and decide whether or not I'd sprained my ankle. I hadn't. Long enough for the sun to sink down behind the tree line. I'd say we had about 5 or 10 minutes of twilight before it got completely dark. When we stood back up, we took one glance back into the woods, and there she was again. She was standing closer to us than ever before. She was just about on top of us, in fact. Close enough to make out her face, if it weren't hidden behind a hank of red hair. Soon as we saw her, she turned away and began walking into the brush. We didn't follow her, because I suppose we'd figured out there's no catching her. She looked over her shoulder at us and spoke in a small, gravelly voice.
I'm right here. Why aren't you helping me?
Now we started following close behind her. She didn't run this time, she just kind of limped at a steady pace. The girl stopped with her back against the trunk of a rotted out old hickory tree. Then without a sound, she threw her head back with her mouth gaped open wide, like in a silent scream. And then poof, gone. Just gone. When me and Campbell went home that night, I think we'd made sort of an unspoken agreement not to speak of this ever again. Not to each other, and not to anybody else. And that's what we did until maybe about a week or two after Thanksgiving that year. Campbell come over to my house and took me to my bedroom and shut the door. He had a copy of the Johnson City Press under his arm. He opened it up to a page with a story about a body being found in a shallow grave on a trail in Unicoi County. There's a picture of state troopers digging around the base of an old hickory tree, and paper said that the remains were believed to be those of Jeannie Kirkland, age 17, of Elizabethton, who'd gone missing after a high school football game. The body had been dismembered, and medical examiners estimated she'd been dead since late September, not long after she went missing. There was another picture. It was a senior class photo. The photo was black and white, but anybody could tell, maybe because of the freckles, that this girl had gorgeous red hair. She was wearing her varsity cheerleading uniform. I felt something like a lead weight pressing down on my chest. Campbell looked at me in the eye and thumped the picture. And then he said, "This is her, isn't it?"
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Jane.
And we have a brand new podcast called Bedknobs and Broomflicks, where we talk about witches of the entertainment world. From the horror movies Warlock, Suspiria, The Witch, and The Blair Witch Project,
To the more comedic or whimsical, such as Harry Potter, Hocus Pocus, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The Blair Witch Project.
no movie, TV show, or book is off limits.
All witches, man witches, sorry warlocks, we're not calling you that, witches brews, witches of history, familiars, and witch-like activity will be discussed as we laugh and have fun talking about the wonderful world of witches.
So join us every other week for some fun witchy talk.
All witches welcome.
This is Edward October, Sunday morning, and I'm here at a typical American home. But inside, Jen and Cam of our True Crime podcast sit down to record their latest episode. Though Jen and Cam are lifelong friends, they approach true crime with the utmost professionalism. They're focused,
So, what dear?
highly articulate,
Alachua? Is that how you say it? It's right.
Alachua, like Joshua, but Alachua.
Alachua.
You will Alachua onto my...
and above all, compassionate.
Honestly, I debated if I wanted to do this. And in the end, I decided it was important to honor this baby's short life.
Every day, more folks wake up hungry for a true crime podcast. And our true crime podcast is enjoyed best by more people. So whenever you're downloading any podcast of any kind, be sure to download an extra episode of our true crime podcast. You'll like them. Available on all your favorite podcatchers or at ourtruecrimepodcast.com.
See this? The mouth? It gets me in trouble.
The monster blood changed direction, still bouncing and quivering and leaving white stains on the grass like enormous round footsteps.
Joe, stop reading it. This is too scary for me.
You're right, it is too scary.
If only we could talk about Goosebumps in a way that isn't scary.
Well, guess what, nerds? There might be a podcast like that called Geesebumps.
Geesebumps?
Did you mean Goosebumps?
Maybe. Geesebumps is a comedy podcast based on the works of R.L. Stein, hosted by me, Danielle, PhD.
And me, JoJo PhD.
And me, Jeff, regular person.
Featuring goofs, funny voices, and the occasional critical thought.
Geesebumps!
Available on Podbean and everywhere else podcasts can be found.
Above the image, Amy had written a little script. Her. Honey, there's something wet running under the bathroom door. Sticky. Him. No, don't. Don't touch it. Her. I had to. It's money. Gurgling noises intensifies.